Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of nonprofit Utopia. I want to say thank you so much for your time and welcome you to today's episode. As you may or may not know, for the nonprofit Utopia community, we have been focusing this entire month on federal grants. Last week, we talked about how you can assess your readiness for applying for federal grants. Today, we're going to talk about the grant cycle. And over the course of the month, we'll be sharing different topics. And by the time we're done on July 31st, you should have a really good idea of the differences between applying for federal grants versus a foundation grant and how to go about the process. We can't guarantee that you'll be successful because it takes a lot of time, but you will definitely understand the entire process and have strategies going forward. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and have at it. And also, if you have any comments, please feel free to share your comments and I will respond to them afterwards. All right. And also, this is a social show. We're encouraging to share this with others that you think might find this of interest. All right. So I'm going to go to the presentation. Okay. So we're going to talk about understanding the federal grants funding life cycle. And you'll find that the life cycle is very similar to a grant life cycle for any grant, but there are certain requirements that the federal government has. And I want you to really get a good feel for what you need to be doing at every phase of the process, and also what the federal government will be doing at those phases. And before we go into it, I want to give you a little information about nonprofit Utopia. We're the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders, and our community provides a safe environment where you can innovate and share some of your lessons learned with your peers. And our goal is to actually train the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders. And we do this through coaching, we do it through an online community, we do it through courses. And, like I said, our mission actually is to train the next generation of ethical leaders in the nonprofit sector. And the overarching goal of the online community, again, remember we're addressing the issue of leadership through more than one channel, but for the online community, we want to make sure that we give our members the tools that they need in order to solve problems, in order to develop themselves, as well as develop organizations that are going to make an impact over time. And our vision is to train 50,000 people between now and 2033. If you want to learn more about us, you can go to nonprofitutopia.com, and you can also visit our network at nonprofitutopia.mn.co. A little bit about myself. My name is Valerie Leonard, and I am a specialist in community as well as organizational development. And I've worked with over 900 people over the years, many years, to help them to meet their goals, strengthen their organization, strengthen their own leadership ability. For myself personally, I have written or provided technical assistance for over $100 million in federal funds. I'm also the host of our podcast by the same name, Nonprofit Utopia. From time to time, I teach courses as well as facilitate grant writing workshops at the University of Illinois. And I also teach courses in social enterprise at Roosevelt's Heller College of Business. I have a master's degree from Kellogg in finance and marketing, as well as a BA degree from Spelman College in economics. And enough about me. So the reason you're joining me today is you want to really get a better feel for what's expected in terms of the federal grant process. You really want to understand the life cycle of a federal grant. All right, so there are three phases, and basically you have the pre-award phase, and those are all the activities that are going on before the award is made, and we'll go into more detail. And then you've got the awards phase, and those are the activities that are going on during the life of the funding proposal or your project. And when I say life of the project, your project could conceivably go on beyond the funding, the federal funding. But when we talk about the award phase, this is all of those activities that are being going that are that you're going to be engaging in during the life of your funding from the federal government. Then after that, you've got the post award. So again, we're going to be going into more detail, but the pre-award phase, that's when you have your funding opportunities and application review, and that's really not involving us as people who are pursuing funds, but that's more or less what's happening on the agency side. During the awards phase, that's when the award decisions are made, and that's when you're doing your work. And then post-award is the implementation, reporting, and closeout. So if we were to do a flow chart, this is what it looks like. This is about 13 steps in our cycle. What's that? All right, so the first is planning an opportunity. Again, okay, anything that's in green, those are the activities that are happening pre-award. Anything that's in blue, that's during the award phase. And then in red, that's after the project closes out. All right, so the first thing you are concerned with is planning an opportunity, and you're not necessarily doing that. That's coming from the agency, and then the agency announces the opportunity, and then you come in. You're searching for opportunities, and then you're going to get registered on Grants.gov, and we actually have a live stream on that on Friday. We're going to show, well, actually next week, show you how to register, but Friday we're going to show you how to navigate the website. Then you are going to be concerned with completing the application, and we will give you some strategies on how to complete the application. Not today, but that's coming up in another live stream. And then after that, you're going to be retrieving the application. You're going to be staying in the loop. You're going to finish the review process. And then next is the award phase, and that's those activities in blue. So the federal government will notify you whether or not you got the proposal, got the grant. And then after that, that's when you're doing the hard work. And then in the yellow, you're going to be providing the agency, and I didn't put that in the key. The agency is going to provide support oversight, and then you are going to be you're going to be reporting your progress. And then finally, you're going to close out the award. So let's talk about what happens during the pre-award phase. And again, this is before you get any funding, and this is before you even know about the opportunity. So what's going to happen is the federal agencies are going to actually plan a funding opportunity. They're going to be doing their strategic planning for the year, and then they'll develop programs, and then they'll be looking for ways that the public can help them, right? And one of the ways they get public input and activity going is through the RFP process. So in the early stages of the grant process, the grant making agency plans and they develop a funding program based on their own administration. And when I say the administration, I'm talking about the head of the agency as well as the president. They're also going to be mindful of their own mission. And they are also going to take into account legislation and any congressional initiatives. And this is a picture of the head of HUD, as well as, our HUD secretary, as well as the Secretary of Commerce in a meeting. All right, so the next step is they're going to actually announce those opportunities, right? So there's several opportunities, and here's a picture of the website that describes one such opportunity, but they're going to actually create an RFP. And after they create the RFP and get all of the documentation together, they announce the opportunity. And one of the main ways, not the only way, but one of the main ways they make known opportunities is to post them on Grants.gov. And again, we're going to go over that website navigation for you on Friday. And then after that, or while they're doing that, they're going to share all sorts of documentation. They'll give you a package that you can download, and it'll have all of the documents that you need in order to know about the opportunity, know how to respond to the RFP, and any forms that you might need to fill out. And you should keep your eye on your opportunity, the opportunity that you're trying to respond to, because from time to time there will be changes, or maybe changes, not all the time, but if there are changes, you want to keep abreast of the changes, so you would always understand what's going on with the various versions, and then you want to subscribe so that you don't have to remember to come to look at these opportunities and the changes. You will automatically be notified. And then the next step is actually searching. Okay, so remember, in this case, the agency is announcing the opportunity. And once they announce it and post it on Grants.gov, then you have an opportunity to do a search for various grant opportunities. And we're not going to go into the navigation, but I just want to share with you what that search page would look like. And you want to be clear that when you're looking for opportunities, that you're looking for opportunities that'll be a good match for your organization. Remember last week we talked about assessing your capabilities for applying for federal grants, but also, within looking at your capabilities, you also want to be mindful of your mission, because it's very, very easy to go chasing after money, and before you know it, you could be actually doing something that's a little bit different from your original mission. So make sure you keep your mission and capacity front and foremost. The next step is to actually register on grants.gov, and there are a number of steps that you need to take, and we'll guide you through those next week. And you also should look for funding opportunities on registration and other registration requirements that are on your funding application. Every agency is different. Every funding opportunity within those agencies are different. So it's very, very important that you read the eligibility and other requirements. All right, so this is a picture of a typical front page of a grant opportunity. And you should realize too that these applications are not for the faint of heart. They will tell you that a grant application can take weeks, and I can tell you too that they will probably, in many instances, ask you questions that will require probably up to 6 months to maybe a year to actually get the information for, right? But they don't give you the luxury of 6 months to a year. Sometimes, you might find out about an opportunity 2 weeks in advance or whatever, right? So it's really, really important that you look at applications, that are similar to what you might be looking for, look at what's required, and then you can plan internally, make sure you have all of those systems in place, and then start responding, right? And even when you have all the information that you need, because so much information is required and so many people, different people are required in order to give a really good response, you're going to probably need, several weeks to complete the application, right? And you can download the application, as I showed you before, in Grants.gov, and you'll be prompted, they'll have instructions at every step of the way, and there are videos that you can look at, if you have any questions. All right. And then, you can download the information on grants.gov, and then you submit the application through grants.gov. All right. So after you submit the application, then the folks on the other side, and when I say the folks on the other side, I'm talking about the people with the agency. They're going to retrieve all of those applications, and then it'll go through an initial screening process. All right. And then after that, the onus is going to be on you to stay in the loop so you can track your progress on grants.gov. And then you'll also hear from the agency from time to time. They might have clarifying questions, or, they might ask you to provide other information and all of that stuff. So you really want to stay in the loop and abreast of what's going on with your application as well as with that program. So then after that, the funding agency is going to review the application. So remember, they do this initial review to make sure everything is complete and in proper order. All right. And each agency follows a similar process, but also each agency might have their own nuances. All right. So this is a typical process. Again, each agency is different, and each funding opportunity within each agency is different. So it is very, very, very important to read early and often. But one of the things you should be aware of is the review process. So we talked about that initial screening to make sure everything is in order. At this point, they're not necessarily looking for the quality of your responses. They just want to make sure that you have provided all the information that was asked for in the application. If it's not complete, that's a good opportunity for them to disqualify you. Remember, they're getting thousands of applications, and initially they're trying to screen people out, not necessarily trying to award people. So they want to make sure that before anybody is reading those applications, that the applications that they have are complete and they're not wasting their time. So there's going to be a programmatic review as well as a financial review. They're also going to make sure that whatever you say on the program side, there's enough money or not too much money. Sometimes people ask for more than they need, which is not necessarily a good idea. They're going to look at how your financial model compares to what your narrative says on the program side. And once they evaluate that, then they will let you know one way or the other whether or not you have been funded. So when we look at the initial screening, remember I indicated that, they're not necessarily looking for the quality. So this, they're doing a checklist literally to see if it's completed. And then, as I indicated before, they're going to vary. The requirements might vary from agency to agency because each agency is obviously involved in different types of activities. So a housing agency may or may not require the same thing as, a biological science agency. All right. So after you have that initial review, again, that initial review is just making sure things are complete. It's not necessarily looking for quality. It's not necessarily looking at what you write, but just making sure everything is complete. Then you have a programmatic review and assessment. So at this point, it's not uncommon to have a peer review. So people who are doing similar work, who really understand the type of program that you're applying for, they might be included in a peer review process. So you've got this simultaneous process going on where you have people who are familiar with your industry, so to speak, who are experts who are doing the work on a day-to-day basis, reviewing your application. And these are not necessarily people who work for HUD. These are people across the country who are experts in the field. They could be people who work for nonprofits. They could be people like me who are consultants, who have some insights and experience into the work that is being reviewed. And at the same time, you've got people from the agency who are also doing a review, but their review is going to take strongly into account what the peer reviewers say. So they will give a scoring rubric and different criteria that you are to review the applications. And just so you know, too, it's really important, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about strategy. It's important to not only answer every question that is asked, but you need to look at what you're going to be evaluated on. Because just because you respond to the question that was asked doesn't necessarily mean that when they assess your response, that they will be assessing verbatim from what you say. There may be a slightly different set of criteria for rating than what they're asking you for in the question, which I think is pretty interesting. But at any rate, once the peer review does their process, they then share that with the people in the agency, and the agency will have the final say as to who gets funding. And then they will also share feedback. All right. So while you're doing the programmatic review, there's also a technical review for finance. Again, the people who are reviewing the applications are looking to make sure that whatever you put in your program narrative can be backed up in your financial narrative. So you got to make sure that those two mesh. And then two, the federal agency is going to conduct a cost analysis. So the peer review is not necessarily doing a deep dive into the cost analysis, but you can best believe that somebody from the agency is going to be doing a deep dive into those numbers to make sure that they're consistent, make sure they're accurate, make sure that they're in compliance with all these different internal agency financial rules. And then again, they're going to not only, when they make their final determination, they're going to look at how much money they have available. They'll look at the top scoring applications and then make, some determination as to who gets the grants. But the good thing is you will get feedback, so you can have a good understanding or good insight as to how your application was perceived and how you can strengthen it the next go around if you're not successful. And these are very, very competitive grants. So even if your score is in the mid 90s, it's 90 out of 100. Even if you're in the mid 90s out of 100, there's still a chance that you won't get funding, not because your proposal isn't good, but it's just that competitive. All right, so the next step after scoring the applications is the award notification. So you will be notified one way or the other whether or not you have gotten the funding. And again, you will get some feedback on your application. And then the people who are successful, they will also get technical assistance to make sure that their proposal is refined, make it more manageable. You'll negotiate back and forth with the agency to come up with an agreed final scope of work and do a contract. And once you get the contract, it's important to remember that the agency is your friend, right? They're going to not only provide oversight, when we think of the government giving them grants, we're always thinking about the onerous paperwork, we're thinking about the oversight part. But we also have to look at the fact that they're giving you ongoing technical assistance from start to finish, right? So they're going to give you technical assistance to refine your program, make it manageable for you, make it manageable for them. They're going to tell you what's required, what reports you need to file, and all that good stuff. From time to time, they might do a site visit, and depending on how much money you get, you may also have to go through an audit. And those, I believe, are for grants that are about $300,000 and up. All right. And the post-award phase, it's exactly what it says. This is after you get the award. This is where the work begins, right? So after you have settled on a mutually agreed upon scope of work, and mutually agreed upon, that means the agency has agreed. And when I say the agency, I'm talking about the federal agency, and your organization has agreed to a certain set of outcomes, certain scope of work, right? And performance measurements. So after you get that notice of award, after you get funds, then you begin your project. And then you have to be aware, and I guess this is really obvious, you're going to be responsible for meeting those requirements that are outlined in your contract. So there'll be language regarding administrative responsibilities, the scope of work, the amount of money you're getting, the benchmarks that you're trying to hit, and all of that stuff. And those become the criteria within which you are judged. And I say judge for lack of a better word. Again, remember that your program officer from the federal government is your friend. This is not supposed to be an adversarial relationship. And then obviously, you're going to periodically report your progress, and you will be given instructions as to what forms you're going to need to fill out and when. And again, you're going to be held accountable to all of those things that are in your contract. If for whatever reason, any unforeseen circumstance, you're not able to fulfill those requirements, you need to let the people know, from the agency as soon as possible and renegotiate your contract, right? So you're going to give reports of your financial status, reports of your program status, whether or not you've been able to meet your goals and objectives and outcomes. And then if you're subject to an audit, then you also need to be responsive to any request for information that auditors are looking for. And those audits can be programmatic as well as financial. All right, so the next step is the actual award closeout. And it's exactly as it says. These are your final reports. You're looking at, your progress, looking at your goals and objectives, and, whether or not you were able to reach those goals and objectives. And, you'll be providing reports in the format that they're looking for. They're also going to be looking at, how you spent the money. You're going to report how you have spent the money. And then again, if there are any requests, if you're subject to an audit, you have to respond to any requests that they might have. Okay, so we have gone through from start to finish the entire life cycle. And for the next couple weeks, we'll be doing a deeper dive. So on July 9th, we focused on assessing your organization's capacity to apply for federal grants. We shared with our members online, an assessment that they can take to assess whether or not they're ready. And we also shared with them an actual tool that a federal agency looks at, when they're assessing the capacity of an organization. So again, you've got this peer review process, and then you got the federal agency doing their own internal assessment as well. So we shared that last week. Today, we just completed the federal grant funding life cycle. Friday, we're going to show you how to navigate Grants.gov. On July 20th, we're going to show you how to actually register and how to apply. We're not going to actually show you how to write the grant per se, but we're going to show you how to go through the application process. And then on the 23rd, we're going to show you how to create a workspace on Grants.gov, which is how you're going to submit your proposals. And then on July 26th, we're going to step away a little bit from federal grants, and we'll talk about tax credits, employee retention tax credits as a form of COVID relief. You've heard about the PPP program, you've heard about EIDL, but what you probably haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about is ways that you can get tax credits up to $33,000 per employee as a form of COVID relief, and you can leverage your PPP and EIDL loans with that. After that, we'll go back to federal grants, and we'll talk about strategies for writing winning federal proposals. Again, there's not going to be enough time in the hour to actually do a full proposal, but I will share with you some strategies. I'll share with you an actual proposal that was actually funded by the federal government, and that's going to be on July 28th. And then on July 30th, we're going to talk about what you do once you get the grant. All right. So all of these live streams are going to be at 10 o'clock. Some will be longer than others. Some may take about a half hour, and others may take about an hour, but they all start at 10 o'clock. And I hope that you can join us. And if you need a reminder, you can go onto our YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's Nonprofit Utopia. And then you can get a reminder on YouTube. All right. And at this point, too, before I open up for questions, I just want to share with you a few things that are coming up in the Nonprofit Utopia community. Starting in August, we're going to have a master class that's going to show you how to start your nonprofit within 90 days. So if you follow the instructions in this class, if you do all the paperwork that we share with you, within 90 days, you should have completed all of your filings at the state and federal level. And all you need to do is be in the mode of waiting for the federal government. So we will have video instruction, we'll have checklists of every form that you need, and especially if you're in the state of Illinois. If you're not from the state of Illinois, you can email me and I can get a checklist of everything you need from whatever state that you're from, and then you'll follow that checklist. You'll also be getting worksheets that will help you flesh out your ideas, worksheets on how to do your mission, your vision, core values, your program, and all of that good stuff. You'll get to do chats with me, your instructor, and you'll have downloadable forms and instructions. So every form that you need at the state and federal level, not only to start your organization, but to file and make sure that you're in compliance from day one, and you could begin fundraising just as soon as you hear from the IRS. All of that is going to be in this course, which is something you could take at your own pace. It will be on demand, and you can actually, every week you'll get different parts of it. So we try to pace it over a month, and within that month, actually, should have been exposed to everything that you need, and you can also start filing at the state and federal level. So if you're a member of Nonprofit Utopia, this course on demand is $125 per person. And if you're not a member, it's $175. And again, this will be available in August. We have two other programs. We've got the Nonprofit Founders Challenge for those of you who want to take a deeper dive and you feel like you might need a little bit more hands-on assistance from me. We've got our Nonprofit Founders Challenge, and then we've got capacity building blocks, and these are for organizations that are a little bit further along. You have an established organization, and at this point you're trying to build capacity for that organization, and we do an intensive for 6 months where you get exposure to things like building your board, doing a strategic plan, fundraising, and all of that good stuff. And you get to do an assessment of your organization, an assessment of your leadership skills. You get to develop your own leadership plan, your own capacity building plan, and you get pre and post tests so that you can actually see how much you've learned. And then at the end of 14 weeks, after we go through these workshops, you actually get to do the one-on-one coaching. All right. So if you have any questions about anything, that I have shared in this live stream, feel free to post in the chat. If you're a member of Nonprofit Utopia, you can not only post in the chat here, but you can post in the chat in our online community. There are additional resources. You can also set up an office hour and we can go deeper. All right. So at this point, I am going to open it up for questions and comments. All right. All right, so let's see what we have. Dr. Loretta Ragsdale, you're quite welcome. Thank you so much. If you're still there, thank you for tuning in. Anna Kay, hey, I was thinking about you the other day. We still need to have you on our podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Leslie. I like that. The insights you provide are valuable. Thank you. Thank you so much, Leslie. All right. Are there any other questions, any comments before we close out? All right. There being no further questions, no further comments, I'm going to end. I want to say thank you again so much for joining us. And I will see you on Friday when we actually navigate Grants.gov. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.